Can we just take a moment to acknowledge this week has been whack? I mean, just like you always think we're going into a new year, it's going to be absolutely. Case in point, thank you for so many compliments on my outfit this evening, but as you can tell, I decided to pack a really lovely pair of heels, except the left one was from one pair and the right one was from another. And so as my mother would say, oh, she's up there in her scuzzy boots. So that's my week. And I hope, but anyway, I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. As everyone has said, I'm Brittany. I am a destination live wedding painter based in DC and New York, New Jersey. But before we get into this topic that I'm really excited to present to you this evening, I would love to just take a little bit of a step back about 10 years ago, which is crazy for me to think about that this was a decade ago now, to when, here we go, to when baby Brittany here was actively pursuing a career in arts legislation and advocacy. And you heard in my introduction that I'm currently going for my master's in arts administration. And what that basically means is that's sort of the umbrella term we give to everyone working in theater, your favorite dance company, museums, arts and humanities, nonprofits. So I'm still really passionate about this, but at the time, I really wanted to go into arts advocacy and arts policy. I saw myself working for a congressman or senator, maybe they sit on an arts and humanities committee. That's what I saw for myself. So 10 years ago, before moving on to work for the DC government's arts and humanities grant funding arm, I was the first person to simultaneously intern for both the NEA and the NEH. I'm going to use their acronyms, but the NEA is the National Endowment for the Arts, and the NEH is the National Endowment for the Humanities. And I particularly loved interning with the NEH because I was in their White House and Congressional Affairs division. Now, I had been there for a few months, working directly with their congressionally appointed director. Everything was going swimmingly until one lovely morning in October of 2013. Now, I know this is a little bit of a while ago, but for those who may remember, October, November, December of 2013 in the federal government was a little bit of a wackadoodle time. And so for us that morning, I go into work on a lovely fall day, and we walked straight into a bit of a PR crisis. Now, I am not here to name names. That's just not the person I'm going to be tonight. But the reason it was a PR crisis was because one particular very high-ranking senator, who's no longer in office, but at the time very high-ranking, very notable, decided to release, rather randomly, his list of the top 10 examples of the most wasteful government spending. And you can imagine whose agency made it on the list. Not once, twice, and then along with her sister agency was also on the list. It was us at the NEH. Now, we weren't exactly shocked. We were shocked at the list. You know, it would have been a little bit of a courtesy. You know, can you give us a little bit of a heads up so we know we're playing defense for the next few weeks? But we weren't exactly shocked at this mentality, because how many of you out there, whether it was when you were younger or even now, if you loved theater, writing, painting, whatever, how many of you had people in your life who were like, you should probably go do something else. You're gonna starve. You're never gonna find a job, right? Yeah. Now, I was very lucky at the time. I grew up in New Jersey, right, not too far from Manhattan. So my family was very cultured in that sense that I just grew up in a family who really appreciated the arts and culture. So this particular instance was like the first time in my life where not only in the professional workplace, an adult, and very much someone who was very much more of an adult than me at the time, basically told me what you do is worthless, what you do is silly, what you do is frivolous. And so I just like to tell that story because that's sort of the fire that I kind of always keep in my belly with whatever I do, whatever decision I make, because that never feels good, right? And so when it was time to leave that 9-to-5 life behind and jump into the wedding and events industry, I was determined to never be viewed as frivolous, unnecessary, or trivial or wasteful ever again. But, they love me, why not? And can we please just acknowledge, yes, my amazing husband took that picture of me in the blue sweater and there is a tree coming out of my head. It's like, I swear, like 9 whatever years later, the whole Instagram boyfriend thing, he just doesn't get it. I love him so much. If he's watching on the stream, I love you, man, but all right, quick second. Do you remember on this slide I said I was going to come back to this point about how leading with style can leave you vulnerable to market changes and lost opportunities? And this is where I want to highlight a really wonderful colleague of mine up in DC. Is anyone familiar with Abby Jew photography? Totally okay. She is based in DC, which is really lucky for me. I've had the pleasure of working with her and being photographed by her. I would honestly say she is nationally renowned now, if not internationally. And the thing about Abby is, when I entered the market, especially the DC market, Abby and her team were already very well established. When I thought of Abby, I immediately linked her with Martha Stewart weddings. The amount of times Abby and her team were featured in Martha Stewart is insane, including the wedding we got to work on together. But Abby's work, especially at the time, was that quintessential fine art, elevated, luxurious photography, highly editorial, not quite bright and airy, but you can envision it even just as I'm saying it, right? Now, I apologize, I didn't take into account that the projector was going to tweedledee with the coloring. So if you would love to, please take out your phones if you would love to, otherwise don't worry about it, because I really wanted to highlight the differences in her past Instagram grid and her current Instagram grid. You don't have to, but it's a lot easier to see the true colors on the phone screen. Now, here are some screenshots I took of stage directions. On your left, my right, is her grid from a few years ago. So you can see exactly what I mean by Martha Stewart editorial, right? Her subjects are very centered. Again, I apologize for the color. It is very like bright and airy, edited. Everything is centered. The table settings are centered. The couple is centered. Even if there's a little bit of authentic posing and movement, everything feels a little bit posed. And that's because Abby was really shooting for publication. And if you think about publication, if Martha's giving you a 2-page spread and a photographer only has 4 images to show off their wedding, each one of those images has to tell the story in that square grid, right? But look at her grid now on the left, which I took a screenshot of that a few days ago. Now, please trust me when I say that the coloring is much more true to life now. Some would even say it's moody. I, as an artist, would argue it's not moody. But I want to draw your attention to that bride in the top left square. Again, a little bit hard to tell, but have you all seen the trend that's really popular right now of, there's like I call it like a fine art Polaroid thing that's going on, where people are really leaning into the like 90s vignette nostalgic, as if someone went around your wedding and snapped it with a Polaroid. It's lovely, it's cool. Abby started doing that 2 to 3 years ago. But as you can see, even in just a 12 square grid, there's one example of it, right? Whereas now I'm seeing a lot of photographers do it. But here's the thing about what I'm pretty sure happened with Abby. I think she was testing out this like 90s camera flash style a few years ago. Couples started coming to her really attracted to it, but she listened to them. And she listened and said, you know, I think what I'm realizing is that couples aren't just attracted to the style of that kind of 90s nostalgia Polaroid. What they're really more attracted to is the authenticity that it provides. Because for as lovely as high editorial, luxury wedding photography is, sometimes it looks just that, very editorial. All of these images are created to tell one story in one shot. Whereas you can now see with Abby, each of those images clearly exist in a full gallery that's telling a story. There's an authenticity to the movement in comparison to her previous compositions. I mean, I flippin' love that one in the middle where the groom is wiping a tear from his eye as his bride just gracefully moves over the shot. That's beautiful, and even here it's hard to tell, but these either bridesmaids or wedding guests, their gowns are still very vibrant. Even if you look at the original photo, the coloring is very much what I think I would see with my human eyes if I was standing right next to her, lens or not. In comparison to her previous work, that was clearly very edited, right? So I would argue, and I will ask her this, if I sat down with Abby to work on her formula, this is what I'm pretty sure happened. Under strategy, she leaned into attraction and buyer persona. She understood her already luxury clients were transitioning towards a fashion-focused, party-forward vibe and away from fine art editorial as we knew it. And under story, she leaned into their desires. Oh, you're good. Oh, it's totally okay. I kind of like it being down here. I like the floor work. Thank you. You're so sweet. Under story, she leaned into the connection. Her couple's desire for capturing authentic, unfussy moments. Because in reality, if you look at this work, it's still high fashion, it's still highly editorial, but it's a lot less fussy, right? A bit more high fashion, even though her couples here are beautiful. I mean, look at that bride with the keyhole kind of puffy sleeved back. She's looking at attracting a different person now, right? And then, obviously, her style. She combined desires for authenticity and nostalgia into a unique composition and editing style that, in my opinion, sets her ahead of some trends. Because I'm watching a lot of wedding photographers specifically try out that like 90s Polaroid nostalgia thing, but sometimes it comes across as if they're just doing it to prove to us that they can keep up with a trend. But if you look at their actual galleries, they're still honoring their, original editing style. Whereas what I love about Abby is I think that desire for what couples thought was just a strictly style thing was an authenticity that has now inspired an incredibly new and different look that I can absolutely pick up in a lineup. So I'm gonna ask her, did I hit the nail on the head with this formula? Because I'm pretty sure I did. And I always end by saying, I'm still on that mission to live paint a wedding in every state. So if you have friends in other places, it would mean the world to me if I left you with even just a little bit of a nugget of something to hang on to. If you would kindly share with them that that is a personal goal of mine, that would mean the world to me. And I would just love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for having me.